Bangladesh, a land of vibrant culture and bustling life, also harbors dark secrets. Beneath the surface of its colorful festivals and lively streets, there lies a shadowy world that few dare to speak of. In its underbelly lurks a history stained with violence, a history that has been passed down through whispers and hushed conversations. This is the story of one such stain, the chilling tale of Roshu, a name that has become synonymous with fear and dread. Ka, a name whispered in fear, a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who hears it. A name synonymous with terror, a figure who haunted the streets and alleys of Dhaka, preying on the innocent and vulnerable. He was a serial killer who preyed on the innocent, a predator who thrived in the darkness, leaving behind a trail of blood and despair. His crimes shocked the nation, sending waves of fear and panic through the streets, exposing the vulnerabilities of a society grappling with poverty and crime. His crimes shocked the nation, exposing the vulnerabilities of a society grappling with poverty and crime. The media frenzy that followed only added to the fear and confusion. In the slums and back alleys, where life is a daily struggle, Roshu found his hunting ground. The desperation and hopelessness of these areas made them the perfect backdrop for his heinous acts. This is a journey into the heart of darkness, an attempt to understand the making of a monster, to uncover the factors that led to his transformation from a troubled child to a feared killer. We will delve into the life of Roshu, from his troubled childhood to his heinous acts, exploring the events and circumstances that shaped his twisted psyche. We will delve into the life of Roshu, from his troubled childhood in a rural village where he faced hardships and abuse, to his eventual descent into madness. From his early years marked by neglect and violence, to his teenage years filled with anger and resentment, we will trace the path that led him to become one of the most feared figures in Dhaka's history. We will examine the investigation that finally brought him to justice, the tireless efforts of law enforcement to track him down and put an end to his reign of terror. And we will explore the psychological complexities that fueled his murderous rampage, the deep-seated issues that drove him to commit such horrific acts. This is not just a story about a killer. It's a reflection of the society that allowed him to exist, a society that must confront its own demons in order to prevent such tragedies from happening again. It's a reflection of the society that allowed him to exist, a society that must confront its own demons in order to prevent such tragedies from happening again. This is the enigma of Roshu, a tale of darkness and redemption, of fear and hope. Roshu's early life was a breeding ground for darkness. Born into a world where hope was a rare commodity, his journey began in the shadows. Born into abject poverty in rural Bangladesh, his childhood was marred by deprivation and neglect. The village, a place where dreams withered before they could bloom, offered little in terms of opportunity or solace. His family, struggling to survive, could offer him little love or support. Each day was a battle against hunger and despair, leaving no room for nurturing or affection. Theirs was a world where survival trumped compassion. In this harsh environment, the lines between right and wrong blurred, and the struggle for existence overshadowed moral considerations. He witnessed violence daily, a grim reality for many in his community. The streets, often the stage for brutal confrontations, became his classroom, teaching him lessons no child should ever learn. Domestic abuse, street fights, and petty crime were commonplace. These scenes of brutality were not just occasional occurrences, but a part of the daily fabric of life. This constant exposure desensitized him to violence, normalizing it in his young mind. School offered no escape. The educational system, underfunded and neglected, failed to provide a sanctuary or a path to a better future. He dropped out early, unable to cope with the pressures of a system that had already failed him. The classrooms, devoid of inspiration and hope, became just another place of confinement. Ka drifted through adolescence, lost and directionless. With no guidance or support, he wandered the village, a ghost of his potential self, searching for meaning in a world that seemed to offer none. He fell in with the wrong crowd, finding solace in the company of other marginalized youths. Together, they formed a brotherhood of the lost, bound by their shared experiences of neglect and hardship. Petty theft and violence became his way of life, a desperate attempt to reclaim some semblance of control in a world that had shown him little but hardship. These acts, though small, gave him a fleeting sense of power and agency. These early experiences, etched deep within him, would later manifest in horrific ways. The seeds of darkness sown in his youth would grow, shaping his destiny and leaving an indelible mark on his soul. As the sun set over the rural landscape, it marked not just the end of another day, but the end of innocence for Roshu Ka. His path, now set, would lead him into the depths of darkness, a journey from which there would be no return. Roshu Ka's reign of terror began subtly, almost unnoticed amidst the background noise of crime that plagued his city. In the beginning, his actions were shrouded in the everyday chaos of urban life, blending seamlessly into the fabric of the city's underbelly. His early victims were often marginalized individuals: sex workers, drug addicts, the homeless, people whose disappearances were unlikely to cause a stir. These were the forgotten souls of society, living on the fringes, their lives already marked by hardship and neglect. Their lives, deemed less valuable by society, were easily extinguished. The city, already desensitized to violence and loss, barely noticed their absence. Each life snuffed out was a silent scream that went unheard, a tragedy that went unacknowledged. His methods were brutal, characterized by a chilling lack of remorse. He operated with a cold precision, each act of violence meticulously planned and executed. The sheer savagery of his crimes left a trail of horror that was difficult to trace back to him. He would often lure his victims with promises of money or drugs, only to subject them to unimaginable horrors. These promises were a cruel bait, drawing in those desperate for a glimmer of hope, only to be met with the darkest of fates. Strangulation, stabbing, bludgeoning. Each murder bore the hallmark of his growing depravity. The violence escalated with each act, the brutality intensifying as he honed his methods. The bloodstains and police markers were the only remnants of his gruesome handiwork. As his body count rose, so did his audacity. The increasing number of victims emboldened him, pushing him to take greater risks. The police, now aware of a pattern, began to piece together the puzzle, but he always seemed one step ahead. He grew bolder, his crimes more brazen, no longer confined to the shadows. His defiance was palpable, a challenge to the authorities and a taunt to the public. The city, once indifferent, now buzzed with a sense of unease and fear. He began targeting university students, young women who represented everything he despised: hope, innocence, and opportunity. These were the bright lights of the future, their potential a stark contrast to his own dark existence. Their loss was a blow to the community, a stark reminder of the evil lurking in their midst. These murders, committed with increasing brutality, finally pierced the veil of indifference and sparked widespread fear. The headlines screamed of the terror. The community grieved openly, and the candlelight vigils became a symbol of the collective sorrow and resolve to bring the monster to justice. The darker police were now confronted with a nightmare. A serial killer was on the loose, preying on their city. The pressure was immense, and the media scrutiny relentless. They pored over scant clues, desperate to catch the monster before he claimed another victim. The investigation was fraught with challenges. Resources were stretched, and the fear surrounding the case hampered witness cooperation. Roshu Ka, cunning and elusive, seemed to melt into the city's underbelly after each crime. He was a phantom, leaving no trace. But the police were relentless. They increased patrols, conducted door-to-door inquiries, and offered rewards for information. Forensic experts meticulously analyzed crime scenes, hoping for a breakthrough. The investigation became an obsession, a race against time to stop a killer before he struck again. What drove Roshu to commit such heinous acts? This question haunted investigators and the public alike. To understand the killer, they needed to understand his mind. Profilers were brought in, tasked with dissecting the psyche of a monster. Their analysis painted a grim picture. Roshu displayed classic signs of antisocial personality disorder. He lacked empathy, was incapable of remorse, and craved power and control. His troubled childhood, coupled with a lack of education and opportunity, had warped his perception of the world. He saw himself as a victim, lashing out at a society that had failed him. His victims were merely objects, dehumanized in his mind, symbols of everything he resented. Understanding his motivations, while chilling, was crucial in predicting his next move and bringing him to justice.